for the countdown.
Two,
Go ahead.
1.
Hopefully we're live. You know, we have one of our presenters who's joining us remotely. We're good?
We're good. Okay.
I'll call this meeting of the Cannabis, public meeting of the Cannabis Control Commission to order. Want to thank my colleagues for coming in, Commissioner Camargo, Commissioner Roy, and I want to thank all of you for braving the weather and the elements this morning to join us for the presentation. We're excited to share this presentation with you. I first of all do want to express my thanks to our entire team here at the CCC, who have contributed in so many ways already to the work we will be presenting. I want to thank my colleague, Commissioner Camargo, who I've had the opportunity to work on this project with. This might be the first meeting where I'm going to do more talking than she will. She's going to owe me for that, but I want to thank her for all of her energy, her insights and leadership on this work. I want to offer special thanks to our new Deputy General Counsel, Mike Baker, one of our enforcement counsels, Philip Schreffler, who have literally been working with us on a weekly basis, essentially every Monday over the last year, to help us get to where we are today. I also want to thank the members of our Social Consumption Regulatory Working Group, Annie, Andrew, Kathy, Matt, Megan, Jessica, and Akila. Akila has been incredible in terms of helping us keep all our documents and information and other resources organized. I want to thank our extensive group of stakeholders who we have connected with during our work. Some of those stakeholders, some of you are in this room, we have returned to multiple times, and we will continue to return to as we move through this promulgation process and the work that lies ahead. Throughout our work, our working group has remained focused on creating a regulatory framework that places public health and public safety as its most important priority. Let me repeat that. We are placing a priority on ensuring public health and public safety as we move forward. I first want to lay out what we plan to cover today. Today is our first opportunity to share our team's work with our colleagues and all of you. All the foundation work, a lot of it that was done by the inaugural set of commissioners, all of our outreach, understanding why the critical pieces we feel for social consumption can make it a success at this moment. Sharing our proposed license types as we move through our work, the lengthy amount of topics we feel we needed to address and prepare for, and the steps toward implementation. What we won't be covering today are reviewing our red line regulations. We have scheduled 12/17 as a date for the 4 commissioners and our staff to walk through the red line version of our regs, gather feedback, discuss language, and work to answer questions. Those draft regulations will be made available to commissioners early next week. Certainly realize it's going to be a busy week for all of us because we do have a regular standing public meeting, but we want to work toward our goal of putting the red line regulations out for informal public comment. I also want to share with all of you the following. Social consumption is really, I view it, still in its infancy. Even mature jurisdictions like California and Colorado, who we have had the opportunity to talk to and collaborate with, have continued to make changes and offer new opportunities with respect to their own legalized and licensed social consumption. Some jurisdictions have allowed social consumption just within the past few years, and some have regulations have been created but have not licensed the first establishment. 2, we know that social consumption in different forms is already happening. Folks organize events with BYOC. We understand that's going on. 3, this framework and the accompanying regulations represent our exhaustive and thoughtful work. It is no way intended to have every answer to every question. We know that this space within the industry has the opportunity to be innovative while continuing to be compliant and successful. Some of what you will see either in our presentation or the draft regs is also meant to invite conversation, feedback, comments throughout this whole promulgation process. We are anxious for the many stakeholders we have talked to and the broader public to weigh in on this framework and accompanying regulation. Just as we saw with our recent work on delivery regulations, the public input helps us as policymakers and staff to consider changes and incorporate those changes into a final set of regulations. We also know this regulatory process is never quick, never speedy. We know even with Chapter 180 passed back in 2022, we are still instituting some of the requirements from the regulations that we created for those changes. But certainly we invite folks, reach out to us, commission@cccmass.com, use the subject heading social consumption whenever you wish to weigh in. As we begin our presentation, we'll take a couple of breaks and invite feedback, impression, or thoughts from our colleagues. And certainly, having all of you today, we do want to have some informal chats and conversations at the end of the presentation so we can get your initial feedback and response as we begin this process. So with that, we will turn to our slides. I am happy to have the support and assistance of, like I said, our new Deputy General Counsel. I'm so happy to remove the acting from his title. And we have Matt Giancola, who is our Director of Government Affairs in Policy, who is also joining us. He's joining us remotely. So we'll begin with the first slide. We'll start with our agenda. If you can go to the next slide, Betsy. Oops. Here we go. We'll start with our agenda. First, we'll have an introduction to define what social consumption is and proceed to show you where it has been legalized across the country. Next, we'll talk about how we got here and why now seems the right time with the right foundation to build and pursue our social consumption regulatory framework. Next, we will walk through our outreach activities so you can see the work that we've done, our public hearings, the survey, the tremendous amount of outreach we have done to our state counterparts, our own Massachusetts government colleagues, numerous licensees, and subject matter experts. All of this outreach is building up to our unveiling of the proposed license types. We'll walk through those license type descriptions, and then we will review the many policy considerations and how we are attempting to address them in our regulations. Finally, we will get to proposed timelines, steps needed for implementation, both internal and external impacts, and a unique step to create needed working groups to help make the rollout of social consumption much more effective and efficient. Okay, we can move to the next slide. Social consumption. This slide may look familiar to a lot of you in this room who have witnessed some of our presentations before, but we simply wish to define social consumption of cannabis. A marijuana establishment licensed by the Commission where consumers can purchase and safely consume marijuana and marijuana products. All right, we'll go to the next slide. Hopefully this map will give you some insight into just how limited and narrow the social consumption of adult use cannabis is in the United States. In the Northeast, while New York and New Jersey have instituted some regulations, a few, if any, have been licensed for operations. I will now turn it over to our Director of Government Affairs and Policy, Matt Giancola, to discuss how we got here and why now appears to be the right time to pursue this regulatory approach. Hopefully, Matt, you are hearing us and listening in and joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, commissioners. Apologies for my voice. I'm feeling a little under the weather, so I'm sequestering myself. But
Are you still connected?
happy to. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in 2016, voters approved adult use cannabis. And in 2017, Governor Baker signed a redrafted bill into law, establishing the Cannabis Control Commission and the initial framework for the licensed industry. Later in 2017, when the first group of commissioners approved the inaugural regulations, social consumption was not included. And it wasn't until 2019 when the license type was approved via regulation. We had received feedback from elected and appointed
Can you
officials.
hear us okay?
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
You're unmuted. It's not on our end anymore.
I'm not muted.
Being
Can
around
you
the
hear me?
speaker. Is he on the live?
Should be on the live stream.
Might
Yeah,
not
you hear me?
be.
It looks like I'm on the live stream.
Unless he got like the link before.
Let's hold on a second, see if we can get Matt to join us.
Let's see.
All right, thanks, Megan.
Okay, I'm getting some feedback that we are live. Commissioners, can you hear me? So for the public, it looks like the public meeting room cannot hear me. But it looks like I am live.
We can hear Matt on the outside in case that's not hearing in the room.
Okay. Okay, we can hear him. Folks can hear him on the live stream. They just can't hear him in here.
That would prove to be an issue. I'll just hold for a moment to fix these technical issues.
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Hmm?
Can you hear me now?
See if we can get Matt here. If not,
That's standing by. Thank you.
Can you hear me now? I will just come to the meeting room. So hold on, everyone.
There we go.
I'll be right back. Oh, wait, can you hear me?
Can you try speaking?
Yeah, can you hear me now? I'll just come by. One moment.
okay.
You want to spread germs?
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right.
Go ahead, man. Thank you.
Technical difficulties. I'm guessing you didn't hear anything.
Yep.
Okay,
So start from
I'll start from scratch. Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. So in 2016, voters approved adult use cannabis. And in 2017, Governor Baker signed a redrafted bill into law, establishing the Cannabis Control Commission and the initial framework for the licensed industry. Later, in 2017, when the first commissioners approved the inaugural regulations, social consumption was not included. And it wasn't until 2019 when the license type was approved in regulation. We had received feedback from elected and appointed officials that we should walk before we run, quote unquote, and stand up the traditional regulated supply chain first. Based on the Secretary of the Commonwealth's interpretation of statute, the municipal opt-in provision did not properly conform with state election law. Because of that, no city or town could opt in to allow social consumption until a legislative fix was made. The legislature fixed these issues with the passage of Chapter 180 in 2022. A few months later, the commission formed the Social Consumption Working Group, along with others, to implement Chapter 180. Based on the work of the working group, in May 2023, the commission voted to eliminate the pilot program, therefore allowing social consumption establishments to be located in any town or city that opts in to approve it, not just 12 or 13. The working group continued speaking with other states, visiting existing establishments, holding listening sessions, and talking with local stakeholders, which brings us to today. Next slide, please. Chapter 180 of the Acts of 2022 provided key updates to the statutory framework that social consumption licenses needed. Communities can now allow social consumption through the approval of voter-led local referendum or a bylaw or ordinance change. Social consumption licenses are the one type of license that a municipality must specifically opt into. Chapter 180 also established the Social Equity Fund, which is administered by the Executive Office of Economic Development and allows social equity businesses, social equity participants, and economic empowerment participants to access needed capital. Host communities are now legally required to adopt strategies and practices to support social equity businesses, social equity participants, and economic empowerment applicants. To provide flexibility, our regulations extended the implementation deadline to May 1st, 2024, May 1st, 2025, before any penalties for noncompliance would kick in. Chapter 180 also streamlined host community agreements for many licenses, and cities and towns are already utilizing the host community waiver and HCA model template available on the Commission's website. And Chapter 180 provided a change to permit licensed social consumption establishments to allow combustion, heating, and/or vaporization or aerosolization of cannabis products within their premises. A couple months after these fixes from Chapter 180, the Commission established the Social Consumption Working Group. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the working group was comprised of members from the Commission representing almost every department. As we will see later when we discuss implementation, it's critical to ensure all Commission departments have the opportunity to weigh in on the working group's efforts and provide their expertise and feedback as the licenses are developed. As the working group reached out to other jurisdictions, held listening sessions, sent out surveys, redlined regulations, more and more staff were pulled in to participate. I'm going to now turn it over to Commissioner Stebbins, who's going to discuss some more of the working group's outreach efforts. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Matt. We'll move to the next slide. So part of our outreach, what you're going to see are a number of topics. We're going to talk about the outreach that we've done, some of the learning and education that we have gone through in preparing the regulatory framework. One thing that we heard from both industry and public safety stakeholders that we talked to was about the need for training for this new type of license type. Obviously, everybody already knows any agent, any person touching the plant has to go through the responsible vendor training program. I sat through 2 of those 4-hour RVT programs. I'll save other comments for another time, but I went through the 2 4-hour RVT training sessions. Members of our team also went through a drug recognition expert training program. And a number of us also went through TIPS training, serve safe training as it's called, in terms of safely handling food in a restaurant. Nobody is interested in jumping jobs. Wasn't a training of that sort, but it gave us a good overview as to what consumption establishments, especially ones that allow for consumption of alcohol, look for when they are training their staff. We held 3 public listening sessions, one at Holyoke Community College, one in Wellesley at Mass Bay, and we also held one virtually. I know a number of you in this room participated in those, and we thank you again. We also conducted outreach to cannabis regulators in other states that already had social consumption, California and Colorado among them, but also Illinois, Michigan, New York, New Jersey, and Nevada. We also conducted local outreach. We had a great group on our social consumption regulatory working group. This was a project that our own Megan Doobie kind of spearheaded. We created a survey that went out to every potential applicant that we know of in that space that's, in Mass CIP, either because they've gone through our social equity program, they're already an existing licensee, they're an economic empowerment program participant, they're an existing micro business or a craft marijuana cooperative. And we also visited some existing smoking establishments. I had the opportunity to go to a cigar bar in my old neighborhood in Springfield to see how they operate. Obviously, we don't have consumption lounges yet, short of the Summit Lounge down the street. But to walk into an establishment, see how they handle air, see how they handle their patrons, see how they handle exposure was a tremendous value to me. And obviously, we've done a lot of key stakeholder outreach. So we'll jump to the next slide. This is just a small list or an encompassing list of everybody that we have reached out to since our work began. Starting with our appointing authorities, the governor, the treasurer, the Commonwealth, as well as the attorney general. They all have unique perspectives. They have unique resources through each of their offices. So we wanted to make sure that we connected with our appointing authorities. We talked to the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission about how they license facilities and some of the trainings that they provide and some of the regulations that they have. We met a couple of times with members of our Cannabis Advisory Board. Several of those members of the Cannabis Advisory Board wanted to have one-on-one conversations with us as well, and we provided them that opportunity. We've talked to commercial real estate professionals. We talked to Equitable Opportunities Now, better known from their acronym as EON. We talked to the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security. We talked to folks who are currently offering insurance products to cannabis businesses across Massachusetts. We talked to the leadership of our Joint Committee on Cannabis Policy at the State House, both of the co-chairs. We've talked to local boards of public health. We've talked to local marijuana establishment owners, some who would be in this universe and be eligible applicants for a license to offer on-site social consumption. We've talked to local and nationwide creative cannabis agencies, folks who have been thinking about social consumption, how to make it effective in a lucrative business in other states. We've talked to nationwide event facilitators. We've talked to nationwide social consumption brands. We've had conversations with a number of municipalities who have expressed interest in pursuing social consumption within their city or town limits. That includes the city of Boston, the city of Cambridge, the city of Chelsea, the city of Holyoke, city of Northampton, the town of Provincetown, the city of Somerville, and the city of Springfield. We go to the next slide. More outreach. We've talked to the Mass Cannabis Business Association. We've talked to the Mass Cannabis Coalition's Social Consumption Subcommittee. We've talked to the Mass Chiefs of Police. We've talked to the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. We've talked to the Massachusetts District Attorneys Association. As I said, we have talked to a number of Massachusetts marijuana establishment owners. We've talked to the Mass Municipal Association. We've talked to the Massachusetts Municipal Police Training Committee. We've spoken with the Mass Patients Advocacy Alliance. We're happy to be with us today. We've talked to the Massachusetts Regional Tourism Council. They actually reached out to us to figure out how social consumption of cannabis could be interwoven into the tourism industry here in Massachusetts. We've talked to the Mass Restaurant Association. How can we connect social consumption with food? And we've talked to the Federal Occupational Safety and Health Administration. How do we protect employees who might be working in social consumption spaces? Okay, we can go to the next slide. We'll take a break? Well, we won't. I do want to jump into, these are probably likely some of the most important slides that we're going to share today. The 3 proposed license types. The first is our supplemental license. As one of the members of our working team calls it, the classic. Okay. We decided to give it more of, I guess, a government name. We're going to call it the supplemental. This is space adjoining an existing qualifying ME, which can be a cultivator, which can be a product manufacturer, a retailer, a micro business, a craft marijuana cooperative, or even perhaps the delivery operator, to allow on-site consumption within or attached to an existing marijuana establishment. They can host social consumption activities within their existing facility or adjoining space, depending on the activity. Consumers may consume product purchased on site. So a few examples, and we're going to kind of get into a little more soup and nuts, or nuts and bolts in terms of these license types, but it's on-site consumption space attached to an existing ME. It can be a lounge. Everybody always hears of it referred to potentially as a cafe, a tasting room. We've always been told, how can we be more like alcohol? You go to a microbrewery, they usually have a tasting room attached to their microbrewery. The middle one, and I think this is the license type that the entire working group feels can be a great opportunity and allow for a lot of innovation in the element of this industry. So this is a qualifying consumption licensee who might move into a new or an existing non-cannabis commercial business space. Allows for on-site consumption within, again, a new cannabis business or is attached to an existing non-cannabis business. It's mixed-use space allowed as a partnership with a non-cannabis business. Consumers, again, may purchase and consume product on-site. Some examples of that might be a freestanding lounge, a freestanding cafe, a freestanding entertainment or recreational space, a yoga studio. The example that we always were throwing around in all of our conversations, perhaps a theater that allows for social consumption, a lodging space that may also have a separate social consumption space attached to it. The third license type is our event organizer license. We look at this license type as presenting the opportunity to have a lower amount of capital required to enter the market. Qualifying entities may organize or host temporary consumption events. Those consumption events are only allowing licensed MEs to participate. We want those MEs to be large operators, small operators, diverse operators, equity licensees. You may seek a temporary on-site consumption permit allowed in a single or multiple location. You have the opportunity to store product at your principal place of business. You will still be required as an event organizer license to have an HCA with where the community, where your principal place of business is. And right now we're proposing that events can be no longer than 5 days in length, and you can host no more than 24 events a year. With that, I'm going to invite our Deputy General Counsel back up, and we'll do a little bit of a deeper dive into the different license types. So we'll jump to the next slide. Again, this is the supplemental license type. This is the classic. This is what is used as a traditional license attached to an existing licensed marijuana establishment. And this is how a lot of folks envision social consumption when it's happening. But this is the model that many of you, I'm sure, are aware of. If you've traveled to other jurisdictions, it's attached to an existing licensee. But with that, I will let our Deputy General Counsel kind of walk through some of the specifics.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Acting Chair. And Betsy, if you could turn to the next slide, please. So supplemental, we use the term supplemental on-site consumption because supplemental means in addition to or supplemental to an existing ME, as the acting chair explained. So on-site means obviously in a fixed premises. So that's to distinguish from the third license type we have, which is the event organizer, that can be at multiple locations. So again, this is a fixed location. You would be able to store your product there, obviously. And consumption in the title means smoking and non-smoking of marijuana or marijuana products. This license type is going to be for qualified MEs, as the acting chair explained, so cultivators, product manufacturers, etc. And the term qualified is used because we are instilling the exclusivity, which was originally drafted by the initial set of commissioners. So we are keeping that. So you have to be within the universe of qualified applicants. So that's why when you see the term qualified, that's what we're indicating here. Businesses with this license type can host social consumption activities within the existing facility or attached, and they can consume product, or consumers can consume the products that they purchase on site there. Over the next few slides, we're going to use diagrams to show what this type could look like, and by no means is this an exhausting diagram here. I'm sure entrepreneurs can get really creative with the layout of their space here. So Betsy, if you could go to the next slide, please. Commissioner, do you want to speak towards, I guess, why we decided on this license type?
I can speak to it when you're done.
Okay, sure. Keep going. So this diagram shows generally what a supplemental license could look like. The top shows an ME with an attached consumption area outside of the existing ME. So this could be indoor or outdoor. Whereas the bottom shows what it may look like. And again, this is very simplified. So what it could look like with a consumption area within an existing space. So if you imagine the bottom being a retail space, you could have a consumption area off to the side there. Betsy, could you go to the next slide, please?
Yeah, so the supplemental, the classic, that style of license, again, it's what we hear the most about. It's what folks tell us is probably the easiest to construct, right? I might have an existing space right next door to me. There are things I might want to do on my retail space floor after hours or after retail hours. Again, a lot of what the activity is going to do is the activities that a licensee wants to hold will also help determine how your space and facilities are going to be needed to be built out. As I talk to the industry and as the industry talks to us, we look at supplemental as probably the fastest to get to market, or the fastest to open, just based on the fact that a licensee already has existing space. All right, we'll move on. This is, again, the hospitality on-site consumption license. Again, we wanted to create a license type based on a lot of feedback that we got, but we wanted to create a license type that allows for some innovation. I don't necessarily want to build out a whole retail facility. I just want to host perhaps a yoga studio that has social consumption during some of the classes you want to teach, and I'm inside another space. Or I'm a hotel or an inn. There might be a bar, but I may want to create a social consumption area for my guests who wish to consume cannabis or cannabis products. This is where we see a lot of opportunity for some innovation, some entrepreneurship, and some creative ideas coming from the industry, and we want to be prepared for that. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yeah, as the commissioner said, the license type allows for a lot of flexibility for entrepreneurs to make this license unique to their own business. So in that way, I think it's a pretty exciting license type. The license is for qualified social consumption businesses with a newer existing commercial business space. So if an entrepreneur wants to start their own business, they can do that, or they can go within an existing non-cannabis business. So we've often used the example of a gas station and a Dunkin' Donuts within the gas station to kind of give the example of what it could potentially look like. We would regulate the ME within an existing business in that same fashion. So again, they can partner with eligible cannabis businesses or non-cannabis businesses in that way. So consumption of the product, again, can be purchased on site, and also you can warehouse on site, so store your products there on site. You're going to still have to go through all the security requirements that we would expect out of a retailer, but that is something that we're going to allow for this license. And some examples of that are a lounge, cafe, entertainment or rec space, a comedy club, yoga studio. Again, we were trying to keep this open because we expect entrepreneurs to get really creative. And so we didn't want to limit that as much as we could possibly do that, while still keeping public safety and public health at the forefront. So, Sure. Anything else?
why don't you jump to the diagrams?
Sure. So Betsy, if you could go to the diagram, please. Again, this is not going to be an exhaustive. I expect folks to get really creative with this, but this is, again, a separate consumption area and showing what a non-cannabis business space. Again, if you think about the Dunkin' Donuts and gas station example, you can kind of picture how this might operate. So that's this space. Again, that green space could be outdoors or indoors. You could have smoking or non-smoking. We're going to make sure that you have the proper ventilation system if you are doing that. But this is just one option. Betsy, could you go to the next diagram, please? So this one, again, this is an area where you could consume anywhere on the premises. If you're an entrepreneur, you start your own business, you could essentially use the entire premises for consumption. But for the retail space, again, where customers would go get the product. So again, this is not exhaustive. This is just a way for us to kind of show you how we're thinking about the licenses. And I think some people learn through images, and me especially. So thought it would be helpful to kind of paint the picture through the imagery. Again, I think this is one of the more versatile licenses that we have. And I think everybody on the working group's excited to see where the industry could go with this type.
Yeah, go to the, again, we're excited about this license type because we think it offers a tremendous amount of opportunity, a tremendous amount of innovation. Again, overlaid with the commission's responsibility to provide public health and public safety as a priority. But we think from what we've heard from some of you in this room, what we have heard from our listening sessions, is that there are folks who are looking for a more innovative opportunity and a more innovative license type beyond just the supplemental / the classic license type model that we rolled out first. Okay.
And you've heard around the country that it is difficult to maintain these establishments without something else in addition. And so I think we're trying to get as creative as we can, while to not limited businesses, while keeping, again, that public health and public safety aspect of it. So hopefully this license type will be able to allow for that in the industry. So The next one, Betsy, if you don't mind, is our third license type.
Again, this is the event organizer license type. We know we already have events going on here in Massachusetts. Many of them are bring your own. In these settings, there's always risks of people consuming untested or unsafe products. These event organizers have the opportunity to engage all licensees at all levels to participate in events. Obviously, that event organizer license not only has a close connection or a close partnership that they'll need to have with the Cannabis Control Commission, but also with a local municipality. I think when we get to the end of our conversation, end of the discussion, you'll see that there's a critical role that local municipalities have in this entire process. They need to decide whether they're going to opt in either by referendum or by bylaw change. They're going to want to look at appropriate zoning as to where they want an establishment to be, where they want to allow events to happen. Our partnership with local municipalities is going to be key. And hopefully at the end of the presentation, we'll show you how we plan to effectuate those partnerships and collaboration and continue to work towards creating and standing up this regulatory framework. Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Betsy, next slide, please. So I know we've ran through this before, but as opposed to the other two license classes where it's more of a fixed premises for on-site, this one would allow for temporary on-site consumption at various locations. They could also, entrepreneurs could use it in one location if they so choose, but again, we see this as being a little bit more versatile as far as the location goes for businesses. So we are allowing for an option to warehouse or not. So if they're not warehousing, it will reduce the overall barrier to entry. So therefore, we believe it'll be a lower startup cost opportunity to enter the market, and maybe enticing for some folks who otherwise might be prohibited from entering the market. So, but again, if you do choose to do the warehousing, which we would envision that you would have to submit upon your application, you can store product at your principal place of business. If a licensee warehouse under this model, they may store cannabis at principal place of business and wholesale for retail at their temporary consumption event. Commissioner Stebbins already spoke to the local permitting process, which again is going to be unique to this license. So we'll explain that, I think, in further detail, but you must obtain a temporary on-site consumption permit for each event that you're going to be doing. So again, that's slightly unique to this license type because the other ones are more fixed and throughout the year. And the last caveat for this is the event should be no more than 5 days in length and no more than 24 events per year. So, Mr. Acting Chair. Anything to say?
Want to jump to your diagram?
Sure. That's the next slide, please. So this would be an example of someone who is partnered with other MEs to provide the product at an event. So you could have marijuana establishments come in and sell retail at your event. And this diagram kind of shows what I think the working group would think of as a classic organizer model, where you're really bringing the event together. Again, that's the lower cost to enter the market by not having that physical space that you would be required to have. So this would show a temporary consumption event. Again, you can partner with MEs. The caveat being you must partner with at least 66% of businesses within the universe right now for the exclusivity period. So that is unique to this license as well. And is there anything you want to say to this one?
No, I would just say, Mike said it pretty well. This is kind of a classic event layout that you might have, again, for making comparisons with alcohol. You show up, there are a number of vendor booths, food service, there's event space where we come in and try. This is a licensed category, is that one, we want to make sure that all the MEs who are participating are licensed MEs in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. There's also a requirement, or there will be a requirement on the event organizer to clean up space. They may be touching discarded product, and they need to understand our regulations about how to safely dispose and waste of any remnant product that might be left behind.
All right, Betsy, can you go to the next slide, please? So again, this one will be a warehouser model. You don't necessarily have to partner with other establishments. You can put the events on yourselves. Essentially, you can warehouse at your principal place of business. So again, I expect the licensees to make this their own, but this is just one example of what a layout can look like.
And by the way, dance floor is optional. That's not a requirement. To give you a sense of what an event space could or could not look like. But again, I think what we see with this event license type are lower capital barriers to entry. Somebody could, set up their principal place of business, be the event organizer, go out and solicit and engage the MEs to participate in your event, host an event space. Again, a little more capital intensive, but this also comes back to the earlier slide about how important some of the tools that Chapter 180 gave us. You can now get into these license types because of the social equity fund. It's capitalized this year, $25 million. That's a huge impact for folks that want to get into these license types moving forward. We don't control that fund, but we certainly have been in close conversations with the Executive Office of Economic Development to give them an idea of where we're moving and what they could be looking forward to. So we've talked through the license types. Commissioner Cabargo is in the back. You probably won't be able to hear her, but we're just going to take a quick 5-minute break. Thank you again all for participating. We're going to come back. We have a lot more to get into in terms of different policy considerations and other questions like that that we've worked through as part of the part of our regulatory framework building work. So take a quick 5-minute break. Thank you. Thank you all again for venturing out in the weather. We'll take a quick 5-minute recess.
Because I don't know, yeah, I don't know anything.
Testing the room, testing.
All right. Thanks, everybody, and welcome back from the break. Before we jump into this next section, policy considerations, a couple of people I want to make sure, one, I want to introduce, well, both I want to introduce, and then one of our colleagues who's here who is seeing a lot of this information for the first time, certainly want to give her an opportunity to offer her reaction. But before we broke, I talked about the social equity trust fund that is managed by our counterparts over at the Executive Office of Economic Development. After this, she might become the more popular person in the room, but I want to introduce Mika Brown, who's here. She is a member of the Social Equity Fund Advisory Board, and also part of Boston Cannabis Week leadership. But Mika, we'll turn your mic on if you want to say a few words.
Thank you. I don't walk away from the mic. Hello, y'all. How y'all doing? Nice Thursday morning to come and get this news. Thank you, Commissioner Stebbins. I do sit on the Social Equity Trust Fund Advisory Board. You can't hear me? Okay. Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay. Oh, wow. Y'all gave me a mic. Yes, I do sit on the Social Equity Trust Fund Advisory Board. And as Commissioner Stebbins said, I probably will become the person that you guys all have questions for. So if you do have questions for me at the end of this meeting, we can chat. Now, don't all come at me at one time, but we can chat, and I hope to answer any questions that you have about the trust fund. And I know you're going to have questions about how this intersects and when is the next round going to come. I don't know that. I'm going to say that to y'all all at one time. I do not know when that's happening, but I will answer any questions that you guys have. And thank you. I do want to say that everything that I have seen today is positively refreshing. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I also want to give an opportunity for my colleague who sits in the public health seat, appointed by Governor Baker, currently serving on the commission. While we were jumping into a lot of social consumption regulatory work, Commissioner Roy was doing a lot on other pieces of Chapter 180, especially the host community agreement piece, which is, we hope, helping to effectuate a more efficient process for licensees to work with their host community. But invite Commissioner Roy if she wants to say a few words, give any thoughts or feedback she has to the presentation so far, but certainly also want to invite her to have an opportunity to address all of you and say hello. So Commissioner Roy.
Thank you, Acting Chair Stebbins. I want to thank you and my colleague, Commissioner Camargo. There she is. I know the amount of time, energy, and effort you have put into this. It was not an easy lift, probably the most complicated lift out of all the new law, everything that came out of Chapter 180. I appreciate your emphasis on public health and safety, as it will be mine. I will look through it through that lens. But I'm just curious in the audience here, and I see so many familiar faces here. How many of you are interested in pursuing this license type by show of hands? Just so, okay, wonderful, awesome. And so this is a big day for all of you. And I know this has been, eagerly awaited news. And this is all like you. I'm hearing it and digesting it all for the first time. I also want to acknowledge all the staff that played a role in getting us here today. And I was glad to see all the outreach, and it matters, right? You matter in this. Your voices matter. You will be the boots on the ground, if you will. And, the outreach to the police chiefs and district attorneys as well. For me, with the delivery operators, when we went from 2 to 1, it was important for me to hear from local law enforcement. And that really weighed in on my vote, if you will. And so this is exciting. This is a massive opportunity. in a lot of areas. And I won't ask too many questions because until I see, and I ask questions, I'm very self-aware. But I'll wait till we get that red line version. And I know we're going to have some really in-depth deliberations line by line. So thank you for everyone that had a hand in getting us here today. This is a big day. So thank you, and thank you all.
Can you? I guess the question is, can you?
So I'll be really quick. But Commissioner Roy, you've been doing a lot of work in the elders community in Worcester County in terms of doing presentations and introducing them to, well, not introducing them, because I think a lot of them were probably doing their thing back in the day, right? So you're like reintroducing them to cannabis. But one of the things that you didn't see on here, and it's something that we want to talk to you about, which is it's already out now, is that we definitely want to reach out to the councils on aging throughout the state in order to really connect our elders with the cannabis community, because now that there'll be spaces throughout the state at some point when we get this through, we definitely got to re-educate those consumers as well. So I wanted to tell you that, but I couldn't tell you because of the open meeting law. And today's the day that we could talk to each other. Yeah, come back up here. By the way, this is the first time that we do this kind of setting.
I know.
So, it's all good.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And I have done with our Director of Constituent Services, Kathy Oliver Jones, and some other members of our team. We go around, we talk to older Americans, and they're very canna curious. And there are a lot of people who are on the sidelines who are very canna curious, and they need more information and education. So that's been my goal, is to provide information and education to those folks. And I think, this will help as well. And you asked me, and I guess we can announce this, to join you in an effort around public awareness. So we want to make sure, and in speaking with other states didn't have that component, right? And they, in hindsight, they wish they would. So we want to make sure it's rolled out properly with the right messaging and the right educational information. So I look forward to working with you on that project. And we look forward to hearing from you on that project, quite honestly. So thank you for that. And I appreciate you including older Americans, because I know that's a big demographic. They got their toe in the pool. They haven't quite jumped in yet. So thank you. Okay.
Oh, one last thing. This is social consumption. So this is supposed to be fun, exciting. It's supposed to be, it's time for us to be social. So there's a lot of power, resources in the room. If y'all don't know each other, turn to the person next to you right quick. Say hi. Say hi. Say hi. Say hi. Look to the person behind you. Our staff is on the side over here. These folks are dope. There's folks on this side too, our communications team. Make sure don't leave this room without you all introducing yourselves to each other. And I know there's some new faces in here. There's folks who does product manufacturing in this room. Okay, so y'all, you see, definitely want to talk to each other. So thank you, and I'm gonna save my voice for later.
Okay. Thank you to my colleagues. When Commissioner Roy was talking, it did bring me back to another couple of foundational pieces, which might have gone under the radar screen in terms of the CCC's work. But Commissioner Roy, very early on, partnered up with AAA, partnered up with Mass Highway, partnered up with the Executive Office of Public Safety to make sure that every student who now goes through driver's ed in Massachusetts, there's a component of their education which is about the dangers of using cannabis in driving. So a small incremental piece got some attention at the time, but that's a foundational piece that we can make sure social consumption happens in Massachusetts safely. So kudos to her for doing that work. I also had the opportunity to work with Commissioner Roy on another piece, which was our recent regulatory change around micro businesses. Micro businesses who previously could only have one license. So even if they wanted to expand in this space as allowed by regulation, they wouldn't have been able to. So we had to make that change. We also knew that there were micro businesses who were seeing success who potentially wanted to grow beyond the 5,000 square feet that they're limited to. We made that change to also allow micro businesses, which again, have to be a license for somebody who's lived in the Commonwealth for the previous 12 months. So Commissioner Roy, thank you again for a lot of that good foundational work that we've been doing to try to get us to this point. All right. If we could go back a few slides, Betsy, to where we left off. And we'll get into more discussion about policy considerations. I hope the train is doing that to the screen and it's not me. Betsy, can you take us back to slide 25? Here we go. Thank you, Betsy. Okay. Policy considerations. A lot of the questions that we got, we are attempting to find a solution for, find an answer for, incorporate into our regulations again, which will be available when the red line is ready. I said at the outset that our first priority is for social consumption to be focused on ensuring public health and public safety. This has been a primary concern for our working group throughout. We're going to focus on the employee safety, talking about signage when you walk into an establishment, adequate ventilation requirements, depending again on the activity that you're planning to hold in a consumption space, viewing areas. Some of those components were part of the original social consumption regulations that were already in the books. The second bullet, there will be no intersection of alcohol or tobacco products within the licensed premises. We want to make sure that employees are provided with any requested PPE that they might have and a right for an employee to ask to be shifted to other job responsibilities within a social consumption licensee. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but we'll be creating a special RVT requirement for all agents working within a social consumption establishment. We're going to create that program. I strongly believe a new specialized program is needed here, and certainly the focus of that training is going to have components of it to help recognize consumers who might be impaired, one, either by their consumption of cannabis or by walking into an establishment, having perhaps had too much alcohol someplace else. We're going to also ask licensees to create standard operating procedures for what we call cool down strategies, cool down spaces. Somebody who's having an adverse reaction, can they use CBD, even making water available, again, to allow the individual who's having an adverse reaction to come down from the high, come down from whatever the effect is. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. Again, continuing with some of our public health and safety priorities, we'll require a 30-minute cutoff of sales before a posted closing hour. Currently in our regulations, there's also a requirement for a transportation strategy for our licensees to help get impaired consumers home safely. I know that's going to differ depending on where you are. If you're in the city of Boston, more alternatives available to you. We also see this as a great opportunity potentially to partner with a local car service, to partner with somebody who's already in this transportation space. The cigar bar that I visited out in Springfield, they're like, if I see somebody who's consumed too much alcohol, I want to make sure that my patron, my consumer, my customer gets home safely, and I'm willing to pay for an Uber ride for that individual. I don't want to lose them. That was a component that was in the original set of regs. We feel it's important to keep that provision in the current set of regulations. Again, Product menu information is also going to be critical. We want the licensee who knows their products that they're making available to share information about projected onset times, obviously level of THC in the product, et cetera. We want that menu information to be available to any consumer walking through the door. Obviously, ID checks, no one under 21 is allowed to enter the establishment. This next one, no cannabis products to be brought on site into a social consumption establishment. If they do bring in something that a licensee sees that they know wasn't purchased there, they can either ask them to discard it. They might allow for on-site storage of that until the person is ready to leave, or they might ask the customer to leave the premises. Certainly, nobody in our working groups envisions that when you're walking into an establishment, you're going to get some type of pat down to see what you're bringing in. But if you are observed using a product that wasn't purchased there, again, we don't know what that product is, whether it's been tested, whether somebody is bringing something in. We're going to ask that our licensees ask that person again, either discard the product, let the product be stored until they're ready to leave, or they'll be asked to leave the premises. We also base this on a little bit of work that we had with the conversations we had with the state of Michigan. State of Michigan rolled out consumption space, bring your own. They issued 2 licenses. One never opened. The second licensee turned his license back in. You will see in our regs that we are contemplating and putting out for consideration, putting out for feedback. We're going to up some of the dosage increase that will be allowed from the original set of social consumption requirements. So I bring that to your attention before we're reviewing it. As I said at the outset, we're putting this out there because we want your feedback. We're putting this out there to start a conversation before we get into the formal regulatory process. So certainly inviting some consideration on that. Okay, we'll jump to the next slide. These are some other policy considerations. First of all, the existing regs for social consumption allowed and established a 3-year exclusivity period. We're proposing in our draft regs a 5-year exclusivity period, and that exclusivity clock will start ticking when the first hospitality on-site consumption licensee commences operations. Those of you familiar with delivery, 2 types of delivery licenses. The exclusivity period started when the delivery operator license first commenced operations. That's the more heavily capitalized delivery model license. So we're talking about a 5-year exclusivity period. I can tell you when I suggested a 5-year exclusivity period, I did it based off some information. If you're going to go out and try to capitalize this business, somebody might pursue using their home equity line of credit to do it. Terms for home equity line of credit for some banks are no less than 5 years, no more than 30 years. So that's where we came up with the 5-year number. Air quality. Air quality is critical, but it's also critical based on what type of activity you're going to have in a social consumption establishment. So air quality was certainly addressed in the original set of regs. You'll see that we have strengthened and given a little more definition to those requirements. Air handling systems, again, will be certainly depend on the proposed consumption activities. And a component of consumption is there are new and innovative technologies that are coming out that are allowing for inside consumption use without emitting a lot of secondhand smoke. What we're going to draft into our regulations is that we will want to give an executive director, the CCC's executive director, the opportunity to give approval to those new uses of technology. There's a lot of innovation in this space. I'm not sure we want to keep coming back to our regs every time because all of you in this room know how speedy the regulatory process is. We hopefully want to be able to effectuate some efficiency and some change by allowing an executive director to approve any of those new technologies and new uses. And it's very small, but extremely important. This is speaking to patient access. We certainly know medical patients over the age of 21 are allowed entrance into any on-site consumption license. We also realize that some patients require medical cannabis products that might have a higher THC than the adult retail sale products. What we are proposing in our regs is to give licensees the option of allowing a medical patient to bring their own product in, showing their valid medical ID card, or allowing a medical patient to have delivery of their product to a licensed social consumption establishment.
Yeah.
Commissioner Camargo, you're up at the mic, so I'm assuming you want to say. Go ahead.
I just want to add here, for folks who are listening and are business owners or even patients themselves, don't wait to give us feedback. Jeremiah, we had a conversation with you and your team in terms of what this may look like, and it was very difficult. We struggled with this, and you all will see the regs and you'll understand it, but it's very important for us to understand what would that look like for business owners, because there's security involved, right? Like in terms of your product and how it gets there and everything else. So I just really want to be fully transparent. And, Commissioner Roy, you and I have been talking about medical reciprocity, right, as well. And hopefully, that passes, but this is a big piece here. So we really want to figure it out. So I would really ask patients to provide feedback for us. Also, I'll take the opportunity to tell folks that next public meeting is next Thursday, and our team will be here to help any patient that may want to register or want more information on the patient program in person next Thursday. So, but I just want to kind of put that out there because it is something that we struggled with, but we're really excited to see it here.
Jeremiah and DeFrank, your voices at the table have been critical and really what made us stop and really think through what possible solutions are so that medical patients could have access to social consumption establishments and feel a part of the social consumption landscape.
Did you say one thing, or did you want to say comments? With the relevancy of the qualified patients, so I was just going to say one thing.
Okay, can we save it until the end? Okay, appreciate that. All right, we can jump down and do the next slide. Food. I'm excited about the potential opportunities in this last slide. We want to ensure that food service is available at each consumption licensee. Food is currently available wherever alcohol is consumed, right? We want to offer that same revenue opportunity for a licensee, but also feel it can, speaks to that engagement. What am I doing when I'm coming into a consumption lounge? It might not just be that I'm going to sit there and, play cornhole, but having food available, we think is and should be a requirement. We know that there is also the intersection of food and cannabis in terms of infused foods. What we are rolling out in our regulations is that food and the infused element come together when they're served to the patron or the customer. Our friends at DOR would say there are tax purposes around that and why it's needed to be, again, in the hands of the consumer. Certainly food service training would be required of all establishments where food is being prepared. But we also think this allows options, again, for partnerships with other small businesses, food delivery options, partnership with a neighboring restaurant or an existing restaurant. And again, might help out the restaurant industry. I want to thank our research department for finding what available research there is that also shows food consumption can actually slow the onset of THC. Okay. Next slide. I think at this point, I'm bringing back our Deputy General Counsel, Mike Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Chair. I'm just going to go through the implementation process from here on out. If you follow closely with us, we just did our last regulatory round. So this will be our next one. So today, we're going through all of the talking points that we've gone through and this presentation. On the 17th, though, we will be releasing the red line versions and going through that with the fellow commissioners at public meeting, where they can make additional changes or suggestions. And then at the end of that meeting, the goal is to open up the public comment period unofficially, but that can start today. Obviously, we'll receive any feedback pertaining to this presentation, but I think once you see the red line versions, you'll have more to say, obviously, as you read them. So we really look forward to that feedback. And after that process, the commission and external parties will work on the implementation of the regulations so social consumption establishments can then open for business. And Betsy, could you go to the next slide, please? So this is a bit of a deeper dive into the regulatory process. Again, if you followed along before, you would have seen it from the last year and then the year before that when we did chapter 180. The thing that's different from this one than the last one is we're doing an unofficial comment period because these are very new and innovative license types, and ultimately we want to try to incorporate as much public feedback as possible prior to starting the formal comment period, which kind of locks us in to the scope, which again, if you followed the conversation before, you'll understand why we want to try to make that as inclusive as possible. So we are here right now on December 5th, excuse me. We're going to be sending the commissioners the red line version and again, talking about it on the 17th. The close of the comment period will be about a month, but again, we will let you know official deadline of that. Then once we get that public feedback, we're going to incorporate that into the updated draft of the regulations. And then we will come back to public meeting and have an opportunity for the commissioners to speak to that, make any other red line drafts, changes at public meeting. And then we would start at that point in time. The commissioners would make a motion to the legal department to officially file with the Secretary of State, and that would trigger our official formal notice and comment period, where we would again seek another round of testimony from the public. We'd have a public hearing and then go through the motions that we just did in the last round with delivery and the other amendments. Commissioner, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, other than if you're in this room, you're generally familiar with our regulatory process and all the guidelines that we need to follow. But to Mike's point, opening it up for informal public comment does allow us the opportunity to look at our entire breadth and scope of regulations as it relates to social consumption. There might be pieces that you see in other sections of the regs that might offer edits, again, to support the framework that we're trying to create. So it allows us that informal public comment, but you almost get a second bite at the apple when we go through the formal regulatory process as well.
So yeah, overall, we're really looking forward to the feedback from the industry and other stakeholders, and please send us all the information that you can. Thank you.
Okay. Next slide. With respect to implementation, I think this is for Mr. Giancola. Matt, still in the room. Oh,
Thank you,
there he is.
Mr. Chair. Can you hear me now?
Of course we can.
Excellent. So once the regulations are promulgated, the commission will pivot and turn to implementation, which we all know is the most time and resource consuming part of the regulatory process. This will include an impact statement, which we are conducting now to make sure everything that will be affected is set to be adjusted. Needed updates and changes include things like developing an application in Mass CIP for businesses to apply for a license, developing guidance materials and other public resources for the 3 new license types, and creating a curriculum for social consumption specific responsible vendor training programs. The commission will need external stakeholders to help implement these changes too. Vendors such as Metric will need to update their software. External vendors will need to apply to teach and build out courses for social consumption RVT, allowing agents to be trained and understand the safety and health aspects of on-site consumption. The commission will need to secure funding for a public education campaign and additional personnel to review these new license applications, review host community agreements, conduct inspections, review HVAC and ensure proper airflow, and review agent applications. Municipalities will also need to determine if they want to allow social consumption through either a bylaw, ordinance, or by vote of the citizenry. Then they'll need to revise their zoning codes and update local permitting processes. Even with all this implementation work, businesses won't be able to open unless there are qualified businesses applying for these licenses, which means they need to have the appropriate access to capital, partnerships, create operating procedures, and build out their infrastructure and hire staff. And as with all marijuana establishments, the timeline will be dictated by the state process, the municipal process, and licensees' business decisions. All of this is to say that once the regulations are available, it doesn't mean social consumption establishment will open the very next day. But the commission is going to help external parties with this implementation. Chair Stebbins, can you talk a little bit about the proposed implementation working groups on the next slide?
Sure. As we've gone through this process, we realize that there are a number of other stakeholders that need to be at the table, and they've expressed to us their interest in working with us. So as Commissioner Roy and Commissioner Camargo alluded to a little earlier, we want to create a public education campaign, a public awareness campaign, working with our internal team and other partners like DPH to fashion a public awareness campaign about the rollout of social consumption. It was very early on, I believe, in our conversation with the state of Nevada. In this question, we asked a lot of jurisdictions that are a little bit further ahead of us is what would you be doing differently? And the executive director of the Nevada Cannabis Authority at that point said to us, I would have gone to the legislature and I would have asked for money for a public awareness campaign. I think, and this is a credit to our inaugural set of commissioners, that when adult use was rolled out in Massachusetts, I think it was rolled out tremendously successful because funding was made available for a public awareness campaign in advance of that first licensed establishment opening its doors. Secondly, again, we've talked about training, a social consumption responsible vendor training curriculum needs to be created. Again, for that type of training to allow somebody who's, for an agent to recognize somebody who might be impaired by alcohol, might be having an adverse reaction, safe service of food if food is prepared on site. This third group is also critically important. We want to reach out and work with our municipalities. So we want to create a municipal advisory group. How do municipalities go through the process of opting in? Right now, it's allowed by referendum. It's also allowed by a bylaw or ordinance change. What are some best practices that communities can share? One community we heard about, again, going back to our conversations with the folks in Nevada, one community decided that they weren't going to tow cars that were around a social consumption establishment. If somebody made the right decision to find another means of getting home that night, we're kind of penalizing them the next morning they come back and their car is gone. So we're looking at that municipal advisory group. One is an education and outreach tool for us, allow them to ask us questions, but also allow municipalities to share potential best practices. And then the adaptation and technical assistance. I know she can't speak, but this is the brainchild of Commissioner Camargo. How can we continue to work and network with the industry, allow the industry to continue to talk to itself about new and expanding opportunities, collaboration, education? How can we get more people into the social consumption element of this industry? So those are the 4 working groups that we're going to be created. Again, the goal of these working groups is to help us have a smoother rollout and a much more timely and efficient rollout of social consumption. Okay, jump to the next slide. Betsy, can we go to the next slide? Oh, okay, this is the wrap up. Our hope is that with this regulatory framework, Massachusetts is going to be at the forefront of establishing safe, thoughtful, equitable social consumption policies. The working group, again, as I said at the outset, we have really taken our time to make sure the framework of these licenses are designed to ensure public health and public safety, support equity, and we hope provide new economic opportunities in the Commonwealth. We know this is a lot of information, but as a reminder, the presentation is available and will be available on the Commission's website. The calendar for today's meeting and video will also be available. We always invite you to offer your input, either here and in person after we conclude. But certainly you can reach out to us at any time, commission@cccmass.com. Put in the subject heading social consumption. But again, I want to take a moment to thank our incredible team, my colleague, Commissioner Camargo, Deputy General Counsel. If you didn't hear, we took away the acting. He's gotten the job permanently, so we can embarrass him a little bit. Our incredible social consumption regulatory working group that, as many of you know, has been at this for a while, but we hope we've come up with a good starting point, a good place to start the conversation. And again, can't thank all of you enough in this room and those folks who are listening online. We appreciate your interest. We appreciate your interest in kind of getting started with us. Immediately, we really welcome your feedback as to what you've seen today and the regs that, we'll be putting out for informal public comment first. But with that, I'll see if Commissioner Camargo wants to echo a few final words before she completely loses her voice. And Commissioner Roy, and then we are sticking around to have conversations with all of you. And thank you again for making the trip to Worcester. Hopefully the drive wasn't too terrible. It'll be a little easier going home, but greatly appreciate your partnership, your interest, and it's going to be a partnership for quite a while to get this going.
I just want to say thank you. There's a lot of folks in this room that we spoke to not once, but twice, or maybe 3 times or 4 times. And that last working group is really for folks to think about, what does this look like? People know how to do this. Social consumption is happening. Folks know how to do this in a safe way. It's just that, it's still hasn't been regulated right in Massachusetts, but we want to make sure that it's safe and successful. I'm not endorsing anyone here, but I know that we had a lot of conversation with folks who are here from Second Act. I got it right. And, we had great conversations with you guys in terms of the work that you've done in the past. And I'm really hoping that that last working group is going to be, it's sort of going to be like mock of what these things will look like, right? Boston Cannabis Week is here. We talked to you, a couple of times as well in terms of what do big events look like. We know folks are consuming at events. We just want to make sure that they're consuming safe products, right? So this has been a labor of love. It's taken a while. So I just want to thank our team. I'm a pain. I push because I know that this stuff, we gotta try our best. Former Commissioner Jennifer Flanagan is in the room. And I always thank the former commissioners because they got us to where we're at. And I know it's really difficult. So this is going to be a very long process, as you saw. But I just want to thank everybody. Commissioner Stebbins, thank you so much for all your leadership and all your work on this. And I will pass it on to Commissioner Roy.
Thank you, Commissioner Camargo. And thank you both again for again, all your effort and your energy that you put into this. It was a massive lift. And, I was happy to see consideration for medical patients because when we just had the existing regs, I'd had conversations internally. This is an adult use license and it didn't contemplate medical patients and who might need a higher potency for efficacy reasons. So I'm glad that you did contemplate that. Now, how does that turn it into an adult plus medical use license? That we're going to have to figure out. And I think Deputy General Counsel said it's a little nuanced, but we're going to work our way through that. And folks have a framework today, right? You have the bones of it. So you can start to contemplate and plan in your mind, but a question I had with the 3 license types, so folks can plan, how do HCA's intersect with those 3? Temporary license, do you have to go get an HCA? Those are things in my mind, because these are things in these folks' minds. So, contemplating how host community agreements work is a big, having worked on that side of the ledger is a big question for me. And I don't know if we want to save it for policy, or if you want to give a high level explanation, if there is one.
Yeah, for sure. Mr. Acting Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So for the first 2 license types, well, number 1, these fall under the category of marijuana establishments, which marijuana establishments under the statute all have to have HCA's. So the first 2 being a set location will have to have an HCA normally. The third one, because there are temporary events occurring, we would make you get an HCA with your principal place of business. So where you operate out of in the state. And then we also have the temporary permitting process for your specific events.
That requires an HCA or no?
So we have consulted other agencies,
Yeah.
Especially DOR in this conversation, as tax implications arise. And so ultimately, where we landed was you need 1 HCA to operate, and that would be with your principal place of business. However, there are a lot of nuances with the municipal process. And ultimately, they will still have an opportunity to get all the terms that they need through their local permitting. So they're going to have to create, whatever it is, whether it's a special permit or some sort of other bylaw or ordinance in order to bring them on. And that's where they can get those terms that they're looking for to be included with that.
Okay. And just so that event one, so that's not really a license, that's a permit?
So the event organizer license allows you to have up to 24 events.
A license that requires a permit.
Permit for each individual.
Okay, all right, so I'm sure you guys are gonna have the same questions that I do. Okay, thank you very much, and I'll be loaded for bear once I get those red lines.
Of course.
But, yeah.
Yeah, Commissioner Roy, you bring up a good point, but also this is the time for cities and towns. Is there anyone here from a local city or town? Like official? Where are you from?
Say I'm an official.
Okay.
City of Somerville.
City of Somerville. You work for the city of Somerville, but listen, you're an official. Anybody else here? Yeah.
Town of Amherst.
Town of Amherst. Thank you so much for being here. You see, this is what I'm saying. Y'all hiding in the audience, and these folks are going to want to do businesses in your town. But what I would say is that this is where you all need to start thinking about your process, right? We're going to do our part. Y'all got to do your part. And I know this is complicated, right? You even loosened up your tie. Yeah, right. So, thank you for being here, but we really need the collaboration of cities and towns to start thinking about this if you want to be in, right? So thank you for that question, because the HCAs were a big conversation that we had within our group. And so Somerville and Amherst, thank you for being here, and folks, don't leave without saying hi to them.
No, I just look forward to getting the red line version. And most importantly, I look forward to hearing from all of you. You're critically important in this process. So please make your voices be heard, because it does weigh in to how we, the lens we look at it. I mean, obviously, I always say this, I'm willing to entertain and listen to any idea as long as it doesn't jeopardize public health and safety. And if you can keep that lens in mind as well. But I do look forward to hearing from all of you. I look forward to seeing the red line version. And I see opportunity, I see economic opportunity. And I know, Chair Stebbins, that you always look for, economic development, and this could be more jobs, right? And more revenue, and more opportunity of using space that maybe isn't being used in the Commonwealth right now that could be converted. So there is opportunity here. Let's just do it safely. And again, thank you for everything.
And get ready for the public awareness campaign.
Thank you,
My
Commissioner.
sleeves are already rolled up.
Thanks, Commissioner Roy.
Yep, thank you.
Again, want to thank all of you. This has been, we hope it's been a tremendous effort, but we also hope it has offered some innovation opportunities. We're regulators. We don't have the answer to everything. We don't have we certainly don't know the ideas that some of you in the audience might be thinking through in terms of how you envision social consumption. We're hoping under the license types that we're carving out that space. But I'm excited for this. I think this is going to offer tremendous amount of opportunity. I think it's a way to it'll allow the industry in Massachusetts to take a next big step. Again, want to thank the communities that are here in the room. Hopefully now you have a sense of the license types, but I want to go back to something Commissioner Roy was just saying. When we did our reg changes recently around delivery, a lot of it was just focused on our delivery couriers and delivery operators. And to Commissioner Roy's point about hearing from all of you, we made some changes to around how an independent testing lab can go and pick up product. That was not at the core base of why we were entertaining some of those changes, but we heard from the industry, we heard from ITLs, I can't lose 2 people to go out and pick up 1 pre-roll and drive it back. And we made some of those changes as we got through the end of the regulatory process. So, you know, Commissioner Roy, kudos to her. She kind of drove that conversation back in front of us, and we heard from the industry. And we heard from stakeholders about changes. So again, what we're putting out, we want you to go back. We want you to digest the presentation. We'll want you to digest the regs when they're available to you. We want to hear your thoughts, whether it's as a potential licensee, whether it's as a potential host community. And throughout all this, even though we will focus on protecting public health and public safety, we're certainly going to be open to where we can create some efficiencies that we can move this process through faster. But again, you want the final word? You do it most of our meetings.
I know. No, I was just going to say really quickly is, I know a lot of folks are taking pictures. This PowerPoint is on our website. So go to the website. If you see today's calendar, you can download the whole thing and print it out, you know, whatever you want to do, but it's on there. That's it. I'm listening.
All right, you're good. All right. Thanks to everybody. Thanks for all of you again for coming out. Thanks to our incredible team that you see around the room. Please stop by and introduce yourself to some members of our team. I know they'd greatly appreciate the opportunity to visit with you. We're around, so feel free to come up, talk to us, ask us any questions. And again, thanks for your participation here today. And thanks to the folks online for participating as well. With that, I will adjourn our public meeting session. I think I might need to do a quick roll call vote. Do I have a motion to adjourn, Commissioner Camargo?
You wanted to make a comment on qualifying patients?
Yes.
No, I actually, thank you for kind of redirecting me, because I think it is more important for the licensing and regulation meeting. But my question is that going to be an open forum on the 17th, or is that going to be not as open as this public meeting today?
It's going to be a hybrid meeting. You can watch us. We will be sitting around the table with the staff and going through the red line version.
And that will be December 17th at what time?
December 17th, 10 a.m. Be here, but you can also watch us from home.
Wait, let me ask a clarifying question. You're talking about the day that our team is going to be here for the qualifying patients?
No, that the regulations are going to be discussed on 17th, and I have some questions.
Okay.
That's more relevant.
All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Do we have such a motion, Commissioner Camargo? Okay, do I have a second, Commissioner Roy? All right, motion been made and seconded. Any further comments or conversation? Seeing none, I'll do a quick roll call vote. Commissioner Camargo?
Aye.
Commissioner Roy? Commissioner Stebbins votes aye, 3 in favor, none opposed. We are adjourned. Thank you all again.